We must, if we choose, be allowed to refuse a coronavirus vaccine. Now, I'm not suggesting that there's a problem with vaccines as a concept. There isn't. I think they're a very good idea. I'm not suggesting even that there is something necessarily wrong with this vaccine, which I think is yet to be determined. But the problem that I have is the kind of authoritarian attitude that is being expressed by, I guess we'll call them vaccine supporters or pro-COVID vaccine supporters, that goes something like this, as we can see from Jake Peralta here. And this just is insane. If you refuse this vaccine, then you must 1. Never be allowed to breed. We don't want your ilk walking among us. 2. Not allowed to claim benefits. 3. Not allowed to travel. 4. Only allowed to shop for food at night when minimal people are around. And 5. Not allowed into pubs. Now, this person doesn't represent anyone, I'm sure. I'm sure that no one else co-signs this tyrannical list of recommendations that, honestly, is the sort of thing I'd expect the Chinese Communist Party to have produced. But the thing is, there are actually people who do want, people of standing, who do want questioning of the vaccine to become illegal, like the UK Labour Party, obviously. Obviously, when there's a tyrannical measure that can be imposed on the population, it seems that the Labour Party are the first ones backing it up. Labour have requested emergency laws to stamp out dangerous anti-vaccine content online, apparently. The party is calling for financial and criminal penalties for social media firms that do not remove false scare stories about vaccines. It follows news on progress on the first effective coronavirus vaccine, which we've covered in a previous video. Again, there are concerns, and I just want to say this is because scientists are merely human. They are not demigods. They are not incorruptible or perfect and unable to make mistakes. But we'll get into that in a minute. The government said it took the issue extremely seriously with a major commitment from Facebook, Twitter and Google to tackle anti-vaccine content. So the Conservative Party are like, well, yeah, of course we're in favour of censorship, as the Labour Party are demanding it from us. Why would we resist that? Why wouldn't we sit there and go, well, eventually we'll start walking down the path that says no one who's taken the coronavirus vaccine can have, people who refuse to take the vaccine can't have children, can't travel, can't go to pubs, whatever. It doesn't matter. We'll just carry on. Many social media platforms label false content as misleading, but the thing is, this is just an obvious civil liberties violation. And like I said, we are putting way too much trust in the institutions and the people who will be responsible for this. In this case, it's a company called Pfizer, which is the largest drug company in the world, and they are hardly saints. They're not new. It's not like they don't have a long track record of corporate malfeasance. Here's an example from the 90s in Nigeria. Now, this example got its own movie made about it in the end because of the disgraceful way that Pfizer appeared to have operated. So as reported by The Independent, Pfizer sent a team of doctors to a Nigerian slum city of Kano in the midst of an appalling meningitis epidemic to perform what it called a humanitarian mission. However, the accusers claim that it was an unlicensed medical trial on critically ill children. The Nigerian camp, they went to the Nigerian camp just as the outbreak, which killed at least 11,000 people, was peaking. They set themselves up within meters of a medical station run by the aid group Medicines Sans Frontieres, which is Doctors Without Borders, which is dispensing proven treatments for the ease of the epidemic. From the crowd that had gathered, 200 sick children were picked. Half were given doses of an experimental Pfizer drug called Trovan. The other were treated with a proven antibiotic. 11 of the children died, and many more alleged suffered serious side effects ranging from organ failure to brain damage. But after 2 weeks, and with many still queuing up at the camp for help, the Pfizer team just packed up and left. And this wouldn't have been a story at all if it wasn't for a Pfizer employee called Juan Walterspiel, who about 18 months after the medical trial wrote a letter to the then chief executive of the company, Walter Steer, saying the trial had violated ethical rules, and he was fired a day later for reasons unrelated to that letter, insists Pfizer. Now, fast forward to 2011, and Pfizer are sued over this and have to pay out $75 million after 11 of the children had died and various others had suffered other life-changing consequences. It was claimed that Pfizer did not have proper consent from the parents to use an experimental drug in their on the children, and questions were raised of the documentation of the trial. In 2009, they reached a tentative out-of-court settlement with the Kano state government worth $75 million. So out of that $75 million, just how much did the families see of that money? Well, it turns out that 4 of the children's families, only 4 of them, received checks for $175,000 each from a compensation trust fund after submitting DNA samples showed the children were offspring. Out of $75 million, that's only $700,000 that went to the families. So it's not surprising that one of the fathers who was involved in this said, we're trying to get on with this case, but we're fed up with it. Our children are dead. Some are maimed. We want this matter to end now, but some people are being opportunists for riches. Seems like he might have a point, doesn't it? But this is not in any way, shape or form a unique case, according to violationtracker.jobsfirst.org, where they track the penalties that Pfizer has had to pay out. Since the year 2000, Pfizer has paid nearly $5 billion in penalties, with over $3 billion of those being on healthcare-related offences and $1 billion of those being on government contracting-related offences. So corruption, corporate corruption, paying off governments, as in the case of Kano, in order to experiment on people, according to allegations. I mean, and I guess that if Pfizer disagree with this characterization, they can come and sue me, can't they? Because this seems to be something that there is a long history behind. But let's ignore that Pfizer have a $5 billion bill for all of the corporate malfeasance that they have been involved in. And let's just go to a direct and concrete example. This is a 2012 study that was done on a Finnish swine flu vaccine that was the only vaccine used in Finland, and it turned out that 2 studies confirmed the link between this vaccine and increased incidences of narcolepsy in Finnish children. And the H1N1 pandemic was the swine flu pandemic. So it's a very similar case to the COVID pandemic, and this is very similar case for the vaccine. So I'm not saying that the consequences will be the same or anything like that, but what I am saying is it's hard to know what the consequences are going to be when a long-scale trial has not been taken up, because vaccines usually take 10 years to develop, and there may well be various other reasons that are actually extraneous, so practical reasons, but the amount of time that has elapsed when it comes to the emergence of the virus and the development of the vaccine really doesn't allow for us to understand what the long-term consequences of this are going to be. I mean, in Finland, it turned out that there was a 17-fold increase in narcolepsy that was tied directly to this vaccine, because something like 75% of the children of Finland were vaccinated. Now, like I said, I'm not arguing against vaccines or anything of the sort. What I'm arguing against is rushing into big decisions based on information that I think we can safely say is incomplete, and making decisions about this that are in a fairly knee-jerk fashion that will have consequences. We should be careful. We should be prudent. We shouldn't rush these things because we're in a collective panic about the consequences of the coronavirus. The cure may well have its own effects. But anyway, folks, if you'd like to find more content from the Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com, where we have lots of news articles and lots of analysis. We also have lots of premium video content and articles that you can become a member and check out. They're all completely worth your while. My personal favourite is our book club. I enjoy reading a lot of books, and I enjoy recommending them to people because, well, who doesn't enjoy a good book?